For hundreds of years, Native Americans and early settlers considered this tree to be a living medicine cabinet. It created the most famous soft drink in American history, a flavor that defines the childhood of millions. But in 1960, the federal government declared it a public enemy and banned it from the food supply. Why did a tree that grows wild in the forests of the East Coast suddenly become a prohibited substance? Is it really a deadly carcinogen that will give you cancer? Or is there a darker reason for the ban? This is the story of Sassafras, the tree that smells like root beer and hides a chemical secret. The archive opens in the virgin forests of North America, long before the United States was a country. When European explorers first smelled the winds blowing off the coast of the New World, they smelled sassafras. It was the scent of a new beginning, a spicy, sweet, and aromatic perfume that promised health and riches. For the indigenous tribes like the Cherokee and the Choctaw, the sassafras tree was a sacred gift. They used the root bark to treat fevers, rheumatism, and skin conditions, calling it a blood purifier. They believed that the thick, red tea brewed from the roots would thin the blood after a long, cold winter. It was the original spring tonic, a ritual of renewal that cleared out the stagnation of the darker months. When the English arrived, they went into a frenzy for this AGUE tree, believing it was a cure-all for everything. In the early 1600s, sassafras was the second largest export from the American colonies, right behind tobacco. Ships sailed back to London loaded with tons of the fragrant roots, sold in apothecaries as a miracle drug. But as the centuries passed, sassafras moved from the medicine cabinet to the soda fountain. It became the primary ingredient in root beer, the defining flavor of American refreshment for generations. Your grandparents drank it. They brewed the tea in their kitchens, and they dug the roots in their backyards. It was the taste of innocent Americana, a flavor that belonged to the people and the land. But then, the laboratory doors swung open in the mid-20th century, and the narrative changed overnight. In 1960, the Food and Drug Administration released a study that drove a stake through the heart of the industry. They announced that Safrole, the volatile oil found in the root bark of the sassafras tree, was a carcinogen. They had fed massive amounts of pure Safrole oil to laboratory rats, and some of those rats developed liver cancer. The reaction was swift, absolute, and terrified, leading to a total ban on sassafras in commercial food products. The root beer industry scrambled to find artificial flavorings to replace the natural tree they had used for decades. The grandmothers stopped brewing the tea, terrified that they had been poisoning their families with a toxic root. The sassafras tree, once the symbol of health, was branded with the scarlet letter of cancer. But if you look closer at the study, the numbers begin to tell a different, more complicated story. The rats were fed dosages of Safrole that were equivalent to a human drinking a bathtub of root beer every day. They were flooded with the isolated chemical in quantities that are physically impossible to consume in nature. This is a common trick in toxicology. Anything is poison if you concentrate it enough and force-feed it. But here is the hypocrisy that exposes the arbitrary nature of the government's war on this tree. Safrole is not unique to sassafras. It is found in black pepper, nutmeg, cinnamon, and, most notably, sweet basil. Every time you eat a plate of pesto pasta, you are consuming Safrole, the same chemical that got sassafras banned. Every time you sprinkle nutmeg on your eggnog, you are eating a carcinogen, according to the 1960 logic. Yet, there are no armed raids on Italian restaurants, and there is no ban on the spice aisle. So why was sassafras singled out for total eradication from the commercial food supply, while basil gets a pass? This is where the story shifts from public health to the darker world of the war on drugs. The ban on sassafras is not just about keeping you safe from a theoretical risk of liver cancer. It is about stopping the production of one of the most popular recreational drugs in the world. Safrole is a precursor chemical. It is the primary building block used to synthesize MDMA, also known as ecstasy. If you have enough sassafras oil, and you have a basic knowledge of chemistry, you can make a Schedule I narcotic. This is the real reason why the government looks at a sassafras tree with suspicion and fear. It is not just a tree. In the eyes of the Drug Enforcement Administration, it is a biological chemical weapons factory. The destruction of sassafras oil supplies became a global mission, reaching far beyond the American forests. In the mountains of Cambodia, massive illegal distilleries were set up to boil down rare trees to extract the oil. The sassafras wars in Southeast Asia have destroyed thousands of acres of rainforest to feed the global demand for MDMA. In the United States, purchasing large quantities of sassafras oil will put you on a government watch list. They banned the tea to protect your liver, but they demonize the tree to protect the drug laws. It is a classic case of a natural resource being criminalized because it can be misused by human chemistry. But in doing so, they stole a piece of cultural heritage and severed our connection to the landscape. They took a plant that had been used safely for thousands of years and defined it by its worst possible abuse. The fear of cancer was the public face of the ban, but the fear of the drug trade was the muscle behind it. However, the "you cannot" list for sassafras is not as absolute as the government would like you to believe. You cannot sell sassafras tea in a grocery store if it contains safrole. That is a federal crime. You cannot extract the oil and sell it without risking a visit from federal agents asking difficult questions. You cannot market sassafras root as a medicine or a cure for any disease, or the FDA will shut you down. But the "you can" list is where the rebellion of the forager and the chef begins. You can still find the tree growing in almost every forest edge, fence line, and open field in the east. It is one of the easiest trees to identify because of its magical, shape-shifting leaves. On a single branch, you will find 3 distinct leaf shapes: a simple oval, a mitten with a thumb, and a 3-fingered ghost. This polymorphism is the signature of the sassafras, a playful signal from nature that you have found the right tree. You can still harvest the leaves, dry them, and grind them into a green powder known as filet. This is the secret ingredient in Creole gumbo, a thickener and flavoring agent that contains absolutely no safrole. The leaves are perfectly legal, perfectly safe, and widely available. Yet most people have no idea they come from a banned tree. And here is the gray area where the foragers live. You can dig the roots for your own personal use. The law stops commerce, but it cannot stop you from walking into your own woods and digging a root. But should you? Is the cancer risk real? Or is it just a bureaucratic exaggeration based on flawed science? Toxicologists estimate that a cup of strong sassafras tea contains less carcinogens than a bottle of beer. Alcohol is a known, proven Group 1 carcinogen that causes liver cancer, yet it is sold in every gas station. The risk of drinking sassafras tea occasionally is statistically insignificant compared to the risk of living in a modern city. It is a calculated risk, a choice that adults should be able to make for themselves. But the choice was removed. To reclaim sassafras is to reclaim the right to understand the difference between a hazard and a risk. So here is what you do if you want to taste the forbidden tea of your ancestors. You go out in the late winter or early spring, when the sap is rising but the leaves have not yet unfurled. You look for the saplings, the small trees that are growing in the shade of the larger forest canopy. You do not need to kill a large tree. You can harvest a piece of the root from a small sapling or a side runner. You smell the dirt as you dig. The scent of sassafras is unmistakable. A blast of root beer and spice. You scrub the root vigorously to remove the dirt, revealing the reddish-brown bark that holds the oil. You chop it into small pieces and simmer it in a pot of water. watching the liquid turn a deep, rich red. The smell will fill your kitchen with the aroma of history, a scent that bypasses logic and hits your memory. You strain it, sweeten it with honey or maple syrup, and take a sip of the beverage that built America. It tastes earthy, spicy, sweet, and complex. A flavor that artificial root beer tries to mimic but can never duplicate. You are drinking the blood of the land, the tonic that the Cherokee drank, the tea that the settlers drank. You are participating in a ritual that has been practiced on this continent for 10,000 years, and you are doing it in defiance of a government that thinks you are too simple to handle a tree. But there is a twist to the culinary use that bypasses the root entirely and celebrates the leaf. If you are afraid of the Safrole, or if you simply want to experience the tree without the baggage, use the leaves. In the summer, harvest the green leaves. Wash them and lay them out to dry in a dark, warm place. When they are crisp, crumble them into a fine green powder and sift out the stems and veins. This is filet powder, the heart and soul of Louisiana cooking. A thickener that turns soup into stew. It has a flavor like savory lemons, a bright, grassy taste that lifts heavy dishes and adds a unique texture. It is the safe, legal, and delicious way to bring the sassafras tree back into your daily diet. It is a reminder that even when the government bans the root, the people find a way to use the leaves. The suppression of sassafras is a lesson in how we view nature through the lens of fear and control. We banned a tree because we could not control the chemistry set that nature put inside it. We labeled it a poison because it was easier than explaining the nuance of dosage and risk. We demonized it because it was a raw material for a vice that we were trying to stamp out. But the tree does not care about our laws, our bans, or our wars on drugs. It keeps growing, keeps spreading, and keeps scenting the air with the smell of root beer every spring. It is a resilient survivor, thriving in the margins, waiting for us to remember what it is good for. The tree that fed the Native Americans, the tree that cured the settlers, the tree that flavored the childhood of a nation before it was declared a criminal. Ancient people knew it was a gift from the Creator, a medicine for the blood and the spirit. The FDA and the DEA definitely know it is a potent chemical factory that challenges their authority. Now you know it is a symbol of lost freedom and a flavor that is worth the trouble. Sassafras is still here, waving its mitten-shaped leaves in the wind, inviting you to take a closer look. It is the forbidden tea, the dangerous root, and the misunderstood medicine of the American forest. It can heal you, it can feed you, and it can tell you a story about who owns the plants. If you choose to drink the tea, do it with the knowledge of the risk and the joy of the rebellion. If this opened something for you, subscribe, because every share helps preserve the forbidden knowledge of the woods. Let's go deeper into the darker reason, because the connection to MDMA is what makes this tree a tragedy. The sassafras tree produces safrole not to get humans high, but to protect itself from insects and fungi. It is a natural pesticide, a chemical shield that the tree evolved over millions of years of survival. Humans, in our infinite creativity, figured out how to strip that molecule and turn it into a party drug. Because of this, vast swathes of rare sassafras species in Cambodia's Cardamom Mountains were clear-cut. Poachers set up massive stills in the jungle, boiling down ancient trees to smuggle the oil to labs in Europe. This ecological devastation is the hidden cost of the drug trade, a scar on the planet caused by our chemistry. So when the US government cracks down on sassafras, they are arguably trying to prevent this kind of destruction. But the hammer is too big for the nail. Banning a grandmother's tea does not stop a cartel in the jungle. It criminalizes the innocent interaction with nature, while the professional criminals find other ways. It alienates the local people from their own flora, making them afraid of the woods instead of stewards of it. If we respected the tree as a resource, we might manage it better, rather than pushing it into the black market. The Sassafras wars are a real conflict, fought over a tree that most Americans think is just a weed. This context transforms the cup of tea in your hand from a beverage into a geopolitical statement. You are drinking a resource that people have killed for, and a resource that people have died to protect. It adds a weight to the flavor, a bitterness that sits beneath the sweet, spicy taste of the root beer. It forces us to ask, can we have a relationship with a plant that has a dark side? Can we use the medicine without abusing the chemistry? The answer lies in the small scale, in the personal, and in the respectful harvest of the individual. It lies in digging one root for one pot of tea, not clear-cutting a forest for a barrel of oil. It lies in understanding the limits of the land and the limits of our own bodies. The modern world wants infinite scale. It wants to extract every drop of oil and sell it. Sassafras resists scale. It demands to be used locally, seasonally, and carefully. That is why it is the forbidden tea, not because it kills you, but because it cannot be commodified safely. It belongs to the woods, and it belongs to the people who are willing to walk into the woods. It is the ultimate anti-industrial beverage, a drink that money cannot buy, only labor can earn. So the next time you see a sassafras sapling growing on the side of the road, stop and crush a leaf. Smell the lemon-lime scent of the foliage, or scratch the bark to smell the root beer of the earth. Remember that this smell is the smell of America before the regulations, before the fear, and before the factories. It is the smell of a wilder, more dangerous, and more delicious world that is still waiting for you. Reclaim the knowledge, respect the chemistry, and do not let the government decide what is in your cup. The sassafras tree is waiting.